Okay. Today we are gonna just quickly. I just want to quickly rant about gear on the PTR for next season, 11.2, because I was working on my kind of best in slot wish list kind of document that I do every single season. For the record, it's available in my Discord for anyone who's interested. But I was going through, and this is a sheet that I normally will put which tier items I'm going to prefer, which crafted items I'm going to want, which trinkets and weapons I'm going to be chasing throughout the season. And something that I noticed, and this didn't really occur to me until pretty much at this point, is that we almost have no agency, or I guess there isn't really a lot of flexibility when it comes to gear. And so going into the next season with Mana Forge Omega and season 3 having this dungeon pool, most of our gear is going to be decided for us. And a lot of our stat weights are going to be decided for us based on these kind of arbitrary systems that are in the game. So, for example, tier sets. Tier sets have set stats on them. They're not going to change. You can't customize them or anything like that, which is fine. Normally, this is something that most players accept. There are 5 total tier pieces. You can wear 4 of them to make your 4 set. So essentially, you're going to forego wearing the piece that has the worst set of stats. So as a Brewmaster monk specifically, I'm looking for pieces with crit, verse, and then mastery. Generally, I want to ignore haste. Now, if we're looking at the tier vendor, for example, you can see all the gear on this character. Starting with the helm, it has crit verse. This is great. We love crit verse. This is going to be a best in slot piece. We're going to, no matter what helm we get in the game, we are going to convert our helm into a tier item. Next, we have shoulders, which have high haste, low mastery. Yes, it has high haste. It has a little bit of mastery, which is fine. Having a little bit of haste isn't the end of the world. Again, with the whole tier set kind of issue is that it has set stats on it, so we're just going to have to live with this. Our chest piece also has haste and mastery, but this time it's leaning into mastery. So this is a better chest piece than I guess, or a tier piece than our shoulders. Our gloves have mastery and crit. These are both fine stats. We're going to be wearing these. And then our pants have high haste, lower crit. So between pants and shoulders, you're going to have to choose one of them, and neither of them are necessarily ideal. This is something, again, that I can live with. I can live with having a little bit of haste on one of those 2 items. It's not the end of the world. But now the complication gets into crafted gear. Or I guess I should actually start with the Reshii wraps that we're going to be unlocking, the artifact item. So this artifact item is going to be granted through the quest line, in the new zone when we're discovering the Mana Forge Omega and helping the ethereals, etc., lore stuff. But this is going to be an item that is just going to be objectively better than any other item you can get. I think Blizzard's gone on the record saying that cloaks aren't going to drop in the next season either. So basically, you're stuck wearing this. So you have 4 tier items you're stuck wearing. You also have to wear these Reshii wraps because they're just the only item that's going to be available in that slot. And then beyond that, the Soul Hunter's optional boss drops an item. And again, this is only for like min-maxy tryhards, but you're going to want to get these bonus loot interlopers or reinforced sandals. I believe they might be a different name for like warrior. I guess they're not. They're the interlopers boots, basically. So this is essentially going to be a lock-in for players who are trying to optimize their character. The powers of your Reshii wraps trigger 50% more frequently. This is a huge buff. Currently, they're not working on the PTR when you have them on, but presumably from the raid, you're going to want these boots. So now we have 4 tier slots that are locked, we have our cloak that is locked, and we have boots that are locked. Now, going beyond that, as a Brewmaster player specifically, the Adrenal Surge clasp is kind of our main embellished item. So this is an item we're probably going to make pretty quickly, which will replace our information securing container, which we got from the 11.1 patch through Delves. So we're going to have this embellishment on. Now, beyond that, you're also going to probably want to wear a piece that doubles the effectiveness of this item. Generally, what people have done in the past is they make some kind of rune branded gear. More often than not, this might be bracers or a lower tier piece in terms of how much main set it gives you, so it has less of an impact on your total item level and performance. But you could always throw this on something like pants. But let's say for this case, we put it on bracers. This is something that I have noted actually in my sheet as well, that we're going to be using the rune brand armbands in conjunction with the Adrenal Surge clasp with the Nerubian embellishment, the Writhing Armor Band, to double its effectiveness. So now at this point, our bracers are locked, our 4 tier items are locked, our cloak is locked, our boots are locked. And now, what do you have to really change? I guess you have pants, your jewelry, and just trinkets and weapon. And so now all of a sudden it's like, well, so all of our gear and our stat weights are essentially decided for us because of Blizzard's arbitrary like systems that are in play. Yes, you can choose different fibers to put into your Reshii wraps. Chances are you're just going to use crit, verse, or mastery, whichever one's best. But the stats on all this gear is kind of set in stone. Beyond that, I was looking through, and there doesn't really seem to be any very cool weapon like we've seen in the past, in like previous seasons. So in season 1, in the raids, we had, I guess it's not going to show here, but we had Nurabar Palace, we had Nexus Princess with the Void Reaper's Warped Blade. This is kind of a high chase item for a couple of Brewmaster players, myself included. In season 2, we had Muggsy, who dropped the Capo's Molten Knuckle. So this kind of cool cantrip effect that's on the weapon that you would maybe want to wear if you wanted to get a little bit more damage from your weapon, and often simmed higher than the polearm, especially in conjunction with something like the Gallywix Iron's Thumb. If you were able to get your hands on this, this was kind of like the highest simming set of dual wielding you can wear. But in this next season, we don't really have anything like that. The weapons are kind of bland. You can get this stat. I mean, this is an intellect stat. Let's go to Brewmaster specifically. None of these weapons have any cool effects on it. So they're more or less kind of just boring and bland, which means that there's going to be two things that are going to happen. You're either going to craft a weapon early on in a season just to have like the highest item level piece or an early high item level piece through your polearm or your staff or whatever you end up making. Or you're just going to pray that you're going to get some drops from Mythic Plus. Now, for Mythic Plus specifically, there aren't really anything like that's worth, writing home about. You have some good items like the Galleytech Turbo Tiller. This is a popular weapon in Season 2. In Season 3, it probably will still be just as popular. Chances are, though, you're just going to get whatever highest item level sword or polearm you can end up getting your hands on. Now, in terms of Brewmaster, the Harvester's Interdiction is a powerful weapon that we saw in Season 1 get played a lot. It gives very good stats. You don't lose stats for wearing this item, and it's going to give you an additional kind of single target effect. It ends up being a very, very low overall, but you're pretty much going to want to run this weapon specifically, especially on the Mythic track, if you can get it from your Great Vault. And so then at this point, now you really just have your jewelry and your trinkets. Now, trinkets, I do like. This upcoming season, there are a couple of good trinkets that we're seeing come into play. Obviously, we have Arakara's Sackbird coming back. While it does give haste, this often has a higher budget on the secondary or the primary set it's going to give you from the effect. In Dawnbreaker, we have the Empowering Crystal of Anubikaj, also a very powerful trinket. You can low roll and get a couple of haste procs when you don't really want it, but when it does proc verse, mastery, or crits, it feels really good. So you have a couple of passive trinkets that are going to be pretty valuable. We're seeing Operation Floodgate also come back, so we're having access to Pacemaker and reading Ritual Mud. Also, all of these trinkets are kind of leaning towards the fact that we may not have to really raid as much this year. So if you're someone who has raided in the past and can't this next year, or you don't raid, you're probably not missing out on much outside of one item I'll talk about in a second. Priory, again, we're seeing Tome of Light's Devotion be very, very strong in single target, and the Signet of the Priory be very strong and competitive with like the Ritual Forge that we're seeing from the raid for Master of Harmony players. So our trinket pool is flexible. The new trinkets from an Ecodome, I don't find that engaging. There isn't a trinket from Halls, and Tazavesh does offer another stat stick that we've always kind of valued. Now this one's a little weird. And in a previous video, I kind of got it wrong the way I was describing it. So basically, you're going to want someone in your group who has either crit or verse as their highest stat, or maybe mastery. But generally speaking, you're going to pair with someone and you get a massive chunk of whatever secondary stat that they have. So if they're a let's say a fire mage who's maybe it's a frost mage who's stacking mastery, you'll get mastery when you pair with them, and you'll also give them a little bit of mastery. So there's kind of like this weird pairing thing that'll go on in Mythic Plus if you're using this. And then Codex at First Technique is not a terrible trinket either. So if you're a Mythic Plus enjoyer, almost every single dungeon you're going to run outside of Halls and Ecodome are going to provide you with an item that is interesting to run, and you might want to have in your trinket arsenal to make decisions based on composition, the key level, etc. Now, from the raid, I did want to briefly mention this. Most of the raid trinkets aren't super powerful. You do have Soulbinder's Embrace, which is a pretty sizable and solid defensive option on a 1 minute cooldown, so it can alleviate a lot of the like, when you go into a new pull, you can pop this trinket almost every single time, because pulls last about 30 seconds to a minute, or maybe a little bit more, but you'll always have access to a quick little 50% DR that'll last for a good bit of time. It'll also deal damage too. So this is always a plus. You also have Forge Weaver Araz and his Ritual Forge. Very, very powerful trinket for the Master of Harmony specialization, specifically your hero talent, I guess. But not something that you necessarily need to have, because we still have access to the Priory trinket. But the big one is this brand of Ceaseless Ire. Now, Ceaseless Ire has been doing outrageous numbers on the PTR. If I can pull up my Priory that I ended up running yesterday, it ends up being my top damage, which is kind of ridiculous. It's like a tank version of Kazan from last season, or I guess season 2, where well, it's kind of not really. It ramps up over time is essentially what happens. Is it stacks up to 15 times, which will make it do more and more damage. It absorbs damage, and it does AoE damage split among all nearby enemies, and it ramps up based on the amount of damage and enemies that are being hit, as well as the amount of time you spend in combat. So it incentivizes tanks to pull really fast, and in doing so, you get rewarded by having a 13% damage increase. So this is probably the only thing you're going to be missing out on if you're not raiding, and specifically the reinforced sandals. Now, oddly enough, this is the one boss that is quote-unquote optional, so we'll see if people end up actually doing this, especially tanks. Tanks are really going to want to do this boss because of the boots and because of this trinket. So it just got me kind of thinking, like, man, we don't really have a lot of options for gear because everything is almost set in stone. And luckily, they have added a new necklace to Priory of the Sacred Flame, which is giving critical strike and versatility. And I believe this Floodgate neck is also new, Mama's Mega Medallion, which gives mastery in verse. Also not a terrible option, but chances are you're going to end up crafting your jewelry if you don't get lucky from your vault or from farming Mythic Plus, because you're going to just have extra crafts, because every other item that you're, pretty much wearing is based around crafting, tier sets, or this new artifact and boot pairing. Anyways, I just wanted to rant a little bit about this. I just found it kind of interesting as I was looking through, trying to compile a list of the gear you're going to want to get. Like I said before, this is available in my Discord, and I am also working on some things that kind of look like this, where I go over trinkets and gear and what you're going to want to craft. So all of these things are going to be available in my Discord if you're interested. For those who are waiting for the next masterclass episode, currently it is available over on Patreon, but it will be available tomorrow on YouTube, which is episode 2, where I talk about Stagger, the nuances of it, as well as some of the talents. So if you're looking for that, go check that out. But until then, I don't know how to stop this video. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think about the gear below, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.